Welcome to the new school. What we wanted to do was talk about the concept of authenticity and vulnerability in an industry that has typically been super buttoned up, super professional, and a little bit old school. Hello and welcome to the New School Video Podcast. In today's episode, we are interviewing and speaking to Ross Marino, who's a financial planner, social entrepreneur, author, CEO, and founder, but also the CEO and organizer of an event series called Shift. I had the opportunity to attend and speak at its launch this year, and its theme was all about human first financial advice. It was one of the most high energy, passionate events I've been to actually all year. And we couldn't be more excited to have Ross Marino come on the podcast and tell us about his personal journey in deciding to show up authentic. He's very vulnerable, so you hear that in his story. But when he really realized the essential elements of human first financial guidance and the impact that it had on his life and on other people's lives, and what drew him to create a bigger movement to organize everyone across our industry at one event where we could explore everything from how to show up authentically in your marketing, cue Ficomm, to what it means in practice management, to having conversations with couples that may be unaligned with where they're going with their finances. We couldn't be more excited to continue to have guests who really epitomize what we believe in, which is we all do better with human first financial advice, and that when more people have access to it and it's a really human accessible form of service, the better we all are. Ross Marino, we are so excited to have you on the New School podcast. I think I came into contact with you first when I found out about the Shift conference that you created and you host as kind of like the first human first financial guidance conference and event. How did you come to create that? Can you tell us a little bit about what it is?
Yep. Shift is, as you said, it's human first financial guidance. And it's the whole idea that when you look at being a financial planner, which I have been for about 30 years, or if you're a portfolio manager, we may manage money, we may create financial plans for people, but really it's not a black box type exercise. You can't just take a computer and help people in that way. And I, for years, had heard how human centric gets tossed around, and that's true in the human side of financial planning. And I certainly love that part of it as well. But when I looked at all aspects of the business, whether it's branding or marketing or client engagement or client reviews, any type of interaction, it's not just about being human centered. But in my brain, I thought I first have to connect with the human. I have to understand who they are, what matters to them, because they're all individuals. I can't put labels on them as a prospect or a business owner or a divorcee or a widow. We do that as financial planners. And I just didn't think that that was enough to make an impact in this industry and in this profession. So I spent some time thinking about it. And we do have a company called Advisor 2X that does conferences, and finally came up with it really is human first. I've got to connect first on the human level, and then I proceed to portfolio management, financial planning, which are as important as ever. I just have to do the human part first.
So, I mean, it seems pretty obvious if you're a financial advisor from the outside that whatever you're delivering would be human first. And yet we know that isn't the truth. Like, what is the desired impact that you had in creating this event and conference? And what are you seeing that made you want to create it?
There's so many organizations out there that have tools and resources and education designations to help advisors take a human first approach. There's the Financial Transitionist Institute. There's the Financial Therapy Association. There's Brian Portnoy with Shaping Wealth. There's Lumion. There are multiple organizations out there that really help you shift the conversation and get to the core of what really matters. And as I looked at a lot of these organizations, I kind of thought, a lot of them are siloed. They're out there, they have their community, they have wonderful resources, but outside of their circle, how many people really know what they do? And when I look at where this industry, I think, needs to go to the human first perspective, the only way that's going to happen is if we can get more exposure for these organizations to the financial planning and the financial advisor community. So I just called a bunch of my friends, the people I know that are in the business, and said, hey, why don't we put a conference together? Here's what I want to do. My role is to be a curator, is to bring these organizations, these associations together, and then be a connector, to be able to connect financial advisors to these organizations so they can make a bigger impact on their client. That's what we did, and that's what Shift's all about.
You know, Ross, it's so interesting to me. Candace and I have both been in this industry for 20 something years. And you mentioned that you've been a planner for 30 years, which we'd love to hear a little bit more about that story as well. But I think of this industry as a relationship based industry, right? The most successful advisors that we know are largely successful because of their ability to cultivate and maintain relationships with people. And those relationships are sort of founded on something that's so integral to each human, which is like their money story and their wealth and their finances. And so when I think of the industry as this like relationship based industry, it feels like I can't understand why it's taken us until, you know, the 2020s to really be having more open conversations around being human first. We launched this New School podcast 3 years ago. And when we launched this in 2020, we felt like we were going out on a limb a little bit and talking about, you know, being authentic and vulnerable and leading with like a human first, heart-centered approach. And we thought, maybe are people going to laugh at us?
We thought they might think it's too woo-woo,
like too crazy. And we feel really, I think, privileged and fortunate that, you know, fast forward to where we are today. And now there's you and the Shift conference, and there's businesses like Shaping Wealth and all of those things that you mentioned, which are just continuing to rise in, I think, impact in the industry. Like, why did it take so long? Like, why do you think, I would just love your perspective. I have my own perspective, but like, why do you think advisors, who are so relationship based, but they never led with the human first, like they led with numbers and credibility and designations and performance, you know, like, do you have a take on why it's taken as long as it's taken?
Yeah, I do. I think you have to look at a lot of the advisors out there and what attracted them to the business. My story is I got a Money magazine in the 9th grade for my birthday. In case you wondered how much of a geek I was, that was a birthday present for me. I loved it. I was fascinated by it. If you come into this business through the investment world or even through the financial planning world, it's getting the CFP, it's quantifiable, it's questions that have real answers, it's math and it's formulas. And even if you don't like that part, you still work with it because you know what you're working with it. We love that stuff. That's what brought you in. When you shift to human first, instead of people asking me the questions where I become answer man and I get to explain, here's what you do and here's how you do it, I'm now shifting the conversation. I'm asking the questions. I'm using, if you saw my coffee cup, right, from Ashley Kwame, I'm asking people, what do you think? How are you feeling? That's what we do before we decide what to do. Those are open-ended questions that I don't really know the answers to. I may not be that comfortable doing that. And for a lot of people, they don't necessarily want to go there. And I think the other side of it is, and this is going to be a challenge that I don't think goes away quickly, assets under management pays really well right now. If you have a business with significant assets under management, adding anything to it has a law of diminishing returns from a revenue standpoint. Most of the people that I see who are my age, which is say in your 50s, they've been in this business a while, our shift to human first financial guidance isn't driven by business. We've already built practices. We're already mature. We've had a life. We have a story. And I've met these people. They all have a story why they will tell you we have to connect with people. We have to understand what's going on. So the motivator wasn't build my book, build my practice, expand my revenue, because I had an AUM business and then a financial planning business long before I totally geeked out on the human side. As long as that's still profitable, I think you're going to see the majority of the advisors stick with that. However, the 35-year-olds, the 40, the 45-year-olds, they are so far along compared to where I was 15, 20 years ago. They already get it, that this isn't just a people business. It's actually about the people and what the money means to them. They're setting that foundation. We're seeing the shift, but it's going to take a while. I don't think the old guard has enough motivation in many cases to make that change.
Why is that? Is it, and what's the shift? I mean, for me personally, and Meg and I have talked about it a lot on the podcast, like our personal stories was really like, we had to find meaning. Like we had to find meaning in the work that we did. And we had to find alignment with like the work that we're doing actually driving meaningful impact, not just dollar signs. And so I guess when we're thinking about advisors and these younger advisors and having a shift conference and seeing who's coming in, I was at the conference this year. It was such a gift to be there. Thank you for having me. But there was just an excitement around being around other people like them who believed the same things. And so is what you're observing and what you're seeing this move to greater impact and meaning in their work?
That's exactly what it is. And when your day isn't completely filled up with other activities, you have the capacity to go in different directions. And that's what I was referring to with the asset management business. My 40-hour week is filled up with relationships I've had for a while. They value what I do. If I'm managing money for them, I'm fulfilled to a certain extent. But also, I don't really have the capacity to shift my business model and do other things. So even if I'm driven in that area, it makes it a little harder. The younger advisors, they're still charting their course. So when they have a choice to either go down road A or road B, they're going to choose road B because it's fulfilling and it has meaning and it matters to them and they see the impact it's going to have on people. So that's why I think there was so much energy there, because they're able to meet all these other advisors. And you were there. The buzz was, it was something I thought would take years to create. We were excited creating Shift. We wanted to bring everybody together. It happened almost instantaneously, it felt like, because people were excited, because that's what they're driven to do. So with the younger people, I think it's a lot easier because they have the capacity and they still have the discretion to shape their practice and their business in a way that matters to them and that's meaningful. And that's what I think we're seeing happen.
So I'm really curious about sort of the way that you're describing the different models and hearing you, and I understand, right? When you have an AUM-based business model, you're getting paid bips off of how many assets you manage. You have a number of clients that you can serve, and then you choose how you're going to build your business, whether that's sort of growing by expanding wallet share and getting referrals, or growing by bringing on more advisors to support more and more clients. And that's the AUM based model. And I think that what I'm hearing you say, although I'd love for you to validate or sort of help me sharpen my focus if I'm not understanding it correctly, is it's hard to then add in a layer of more of this, like whether it's a different planning model that's not just AUM based, but like delivering different types of plans, or even potentially trying to shift to the types of clients that you serve, because you want to have this greater fulfillment and you have this greater impact. When you say that it's harder to do that in the AUM model, you're sort of talking about like the economics, right? Like it's the economics make it difficult to make that pivot. Is that what you're saying?
It's a big part of it. So if you think about it from an economic standpoint, that AUM model is rewarding and it's in there, but it's also organizational competence and organizational capacity. I don't want to get too technical, but those are really the two areas where my brain goes to. Organizational competence is, in order to shift the conversation, I need to acquire more skills. I didn't take the CFP when financial psychology was 8% of the exam like it is now. I didn't grow up in that world as a professional. So there's a competence level that you have to learn this over a period of time. It's not just 3 questions from Kinder, which those are brilliant. Just interview George Kinder. Love the work that they do. That's an ongoing education track as well. So you have to build this competence over time, and you have to do it with the people that you're speaking with. Then you have organizational capacity. It takes time to have these conversations. And if it doesn't support your current business model, it may seem like the law of diminishing returns. So it's good to have these conversations. But if I already have the client, I've already done a financial plan, now I'm trying to shift more towards human first, there's not necessarily a lot of time in the day or within your current relationships to do that. So I think the constraints are organizational competence and organizational capacity. The younger advisors in the business, and from going to Shift, there were people there. They were 2-3 years into the business. They were so excited, and I got giddy just listening to them talk. It's like, yes, you can create the practice you want. Go change the world. I loved it because they can do that. A little harder when you've been in the business 30 years like me to shift and try to add some of these services and a different approach.
That's really clear.
And really clear. And yet you are shifting.
Yes, I am, but I have strong motivations. I have strong drivers. So this is something I love to do. But your typical advisor out there, it's going to be hard for them to shift the focus of their practice.
And when I came to attend the Shift event, and the presentation I gave was about the shift in marketing, which is like why we have such alignment, right? From this old school, over professional, leading with credentials to this human first. Because we know when people are going online to find you as a financial advisor, they're really looking for an advisor that they can match in worldview. And so what does that mean? Someone who aligns with my values, someone that I can trust. Sometimes it's someone who looks like me, depending on who you are. But it's really, it's not just the financial advisor looking a specific way, speaking a specific way, and that being the profession. There's a lot more diversity. We have a lot more to go. But in terms of people being able to find a financial advisor that they feel represents them and understands them. Ross, we had the opportunity, obviously you have a very established, successful RIA yourself, in addition to being the organizer of Shift. We had the opportunity to have you in our marketing boot camp with a few other advisors, really working through and uncovering your why story, your money story, and then being able to use that as a foundation for some of your marketing. I'd love to hear about your personal experience, because I know for you personally, you have a very profound personal story that has driven you to take a little bit more of this human first approach, even though you have been so established in your business.
Sure, happy to share the background. So I was a financial advisor straight out of college, did that for the first 4 or 5 years. And you get the epiphany moment of this is about planning. This is about holistic advice. Wanted to shift from the traditional financial advisor role. I was living in Florida with my wife. We decided to move to Wilmington, North Carolina. And the whole point was for me to open a financial planning practice and start kind of the next leg of my career. Shortly after arriving in Wilmington, I had a back injury. So instead of going out, opening up an office and networking and meeting clients and playing golf and having lunch, I spent the next 6 years working out of a room over my garage, mostly lying on the floor on pillows or in a big recliner. This was the late 1990s and early 2000s. The internet wasn't really a thing. So it was pretty much just over the phone. So when I was at your website and saw how you're digital first, and I kind of chuckled and said, well, I was phone first. So it wasn't even digital when I had to try to build my practice. It was just talking to people over the phone and really delay the meeting as long as possible so they didn't know I was working out of a room over my garage. And when you go through that, it really does rock your world, not just from the standpoint that you have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow and your plans may not have value, but you really can't look out 10, 20 years. You can't project how things are going to play out. So the whole idea of let's plan your future and let's plan your retirement, I don't know if I'm going to be able to stay in the business because I can't get off my back and I can't get out of my house. So it's a scary time. It's pretty terrifying because not really sure what to do. I was late 20s and early 30s. Then eventually I got better. Obviously, I'm standing now doing an interview. My wife and I adopted a couple of children, wanted to start our family. It was wonderful. Our youngest turned out to have special needs, and we didn't know that going in. Long journey, didn't really get an accurate diagnosis till age 13. But along the way there, lots of disruptions, lots of doctor's appointment, constant change in schedules. My wife had some challenges along the way, ended up with some serious health issues as well. And through the late 2000s and up to about 2015, I found myself as basically a caregiver for my wife and a single parent for a child with special needs. In the middle of that, I'm trying to do business during the day. Challenging is, of course, the understatement, but the application to financial planning is that if you would have asked me, what do you want to do when you retire and what do you think, Ross? I'm not sure I could have spit out an answer because I would get choked up. I don't even know who's going to be alive. And you're asking me what I think my retirement's going to look like. I don't know what kind of care people are going to need because I'm not really in control of that. I have to live in a responsive life. Well, as I went through that, you start sharing the story. I'm not real special. Everybody's battling different things. The amount of trauma that people have in their lives that just happens, looks like no fault of their own. The challenges that they have being caregivers, it goes on with all of my clients. It goes on with you and your family. We've all done that. And here we are being financial planners, asking people what their retirement wants to look like, which is completely insensitive to what's going on in their life right now. So to me, that's where it kind of hit me that I'm taking all this time doing goals-based financial planning, which has value, but recognizing that for some people, they don't have a 20, 30-year goal that they can really talk about. They have to deal with what's going on right now in their life. I changed the name of my practice to Transitus Wealth Partners, Transitus being transition in Latin, and then took the approach of human first to understand life events, to understand disruption. So when people come in, I don't give them a bunch of questionnaires. I just simply say, what's going on? And give me the backstory. How did you get here? And that's how I start my process. Been transformational to me. Would I have done that if I didn't have my personal history? I'm going to go with no way. I'd probably be the traditional AUM financial planning practice with 20 or 30 side businesses because I have entrepreneurial ADD. But aside from that, I doubt I would have gone down that road. But I lived it. I saw it with clients, and I realized we got to meet people where they are. We got to help them out where they are. They may not know what's going to happen in 20 years, but they still have to make decisions today, and we actually get to help them do that. It's such an honorable and fulfilling thing.
My goodness, thank you for sharing your story. That's it's so powerful because when I listen to you share your story, Ross, it becomes so clear why a specific type of client would choose you and say, yes, Ross is the only financial advisor that I would ever consider working with and that I will ever work with, because you have had, well, you've had the lived experiences, but you're also, I think, sort of courageous enough to take those experiences and allow them to shape you in a way that propels you forward and then actually like allows for greater impact. And so you've been courageous enough to sort of lead with, these are my lived experiences, and because of that, I've identified this need and I can serve this need because I've got those lived experiences. And so your lived experiences become quite powerful for others who are experiencing something that might be similar or an outcome that might be similar. And so it's like, to me, it just feels so clear, but you had the courage to do something about it. And so I hear you say that, like, if you hadn't had the experience, maybe you would just have gone the traditional route. I think maybe not, because I think not everyone has that level of self-awareness, the desire to be bold, the desire to like really pursue impact. Like, I feel as though there's got to be something in your story where that impact is really important to sort of how you approach your day to day.
Yeah, there is. Obviously, there's going to be a self-awareness side. Things matter. Things are much deeper for me when I was in high school. So yes, I got my first money magazine in ninth grade. The subscription I had was to Psychology Today. So that was my real geek magazine, and I was fascinated by it. So I've always been fascinated by the human side. It just wasn't a huge part of my practice or my relationship. So yes, I was investment first when I was younger, then I was planning first. And it eventually came to be human first. So would have I ended up somewhere along the line of where I'm at today? Well, sure, probably it would have driven, it would have eventually ended up there. But I guess the motivation behind it to wake up each day and be in that position where you have absolutely no idea. Yeah, it gets real. And to ask me, so what age do you want to retire at? That's one of the most insensitive questions you could ask someone who is going through a major transition in life. They don't even know if they're going to get out of bed, or it takes energy to do that. And you're asking them to look towards the future. So I'm trying to figure out how to be happy today and to be healthy and to have healthy relationships and manage my health. And you want to know if I want to retire at age 65. It's a hard thing to do. And as advisors, we don't get that. I looked back over the years, the number of insensitive questions I had asked people is just shocking. Like, and we joke like, I don't get it. I'm like, oh, I'm the king of it. There's conversations I had and questions that I would go back and relive and think, oh my gosh, that was the most ridiculous, inappropriate question to ask because it relates to money or numbers. And the person's telling me something with tears in their eyes. I'm like, oh, I'm so clueless. But, I have a wife, I have 2 daughters. I've come a long way. Still got a long way to go, but I've come a long way.
I think what we're actually talking about is like the path less traveled, right? The one that is not predetermined. So I think if we were to really look at ourselves 10, 20 years earlier, like financial services had a very specific type of career path, a look and feel from a marketing perspective, how financial advisors dressed, how they interacted, to your point of like leading with numbers. And I think through our own lived experiences and our humanity, what we're starting to discover is what really matters is empathy. It's connection. That sometimes the wealthiest people, where all their numbers are aligned and right, are unhappy, right? Because they've made choices based on the numbers and not that level of fulfillment that we all really ultimately seek. And I even think when we think about retirement, I think when we get to retirement, I think retirement is almost like dated in like its definition, right? Like I don't imagine that at 65 or whatever, I'm going to stop working and then go travel the world. That's not, I'm probably always going to work because I enjoy it and I like it. And I like to imagine I'll own a yoga studio and there'll be health and vitality. But I don't think I'm alone there. I think there's a number of factors there. So I think we're redefining retirement as it speaks. And so we're actually, when we think about this human first approach, what we're really saying is, how do we help people live the lives that they want? So it's moving from financial planning to life planning. And I remember the Shift conference, one of the things that really hit home with me was when Carl Richards said, people don't say they have financial goals. What they say is they have personal goals that have a price tag attached to it. And that's really like the humanity. So when you are like, coming back to this idea of shift, we sometimes speak to advisors and firms who are like, no, we don't really believe in that. Our clients come to us to solve a problem. It's a money problem. They don't care what we do. They don't care like what we value. And we always have to say, we don't know if that's true for the future client that you're going to attract. What would you say to those advisors who may still be in the mind frame of like it's not necessary, they don't see the value of it? Like, is there anything to say, or is there just a place for that type of client and person?
Are they a skeptic or are they a cynic? I can't help cynics. I'm not going to have conversations with cynics. They're on the far ends of the political spectrum, right? Can't have conversations with them. Skeptics, those are people you can talk with. I think the advisors that are stuck on the numbers have a business model built around that. And for many of them, there isn't anything you can say. What they believe is their value is answering those financial questions and providing financial services. I would say they're right, because that is their business. However, the reason the clients are coming to them isn't for the financial reasons. It's for what that money means to their life and how it supports what they do. So the clients aren't driven by the money. The clients are driven by what the money can do for them and their families. What I think fakes us out, and I noticed this early on in my transition, is there's always those 1 or 2 clients that they're about the money. They love the money because that's how you keep score. It isn't about what we're going to do with the money. It's making sure we have more money. It may be from an achievement standpoint, or it may be from a fear security standpoint, left over from the Depression days, because that's how they grew up. So you will find people that it really is about the money. And it's unfortunate because they don't get to enjoy life as much because they always need a little bit more. So, how much do you need? What is your number? I guess the question really is, how much is enough? For those people, there is no enough. You can't help those people. And because we have these conversations, I think it kind of fakes out the advisor a little bit that, yeah, this really does matter. And they really care about the investments. Maybe that's 1 out of 100. I'm making up a stat because I have no idea. But for the majority of them, they want the nest egg. They want the money to support their life so they can, and here we go. I'll give you my mission statement straight from the Ficomm bootcamp. They want to worry less about what could go wrong so they can focus more on what to get right. Your typical, thanks Ficomm, your typical advisor doesn't necessarily see that. I'm not sure I saw it until just recently, but that's really what it is. They do want to worry less. That's why we help them make financial decisions. But it's not just isolated lower stress. It's so they can focus more on the things they want to get right. That's living a meaningful and fulfilling life. That's what the money supports. And I'm not sure many advisors really get the value of that.
Well, that's just such a beautiful demonstration, Ross, of why it's so important to center all of your marketing efforts around your why and your who. Because that, what you just said, the mission statement that you just shared, that cuts across generations, right? There are people that are in their early 20s to people who are honestly probably like near the end of their lives that want to worry less so that they can have more time to focus on what they want to get right. That's not specific to, I work with people who are aged 55 to 65 with $1 million of investable assets and a net worth of $5 million, which is what a lot of advisors are targeting. You know, what you've done is you've gotten really clear on your own vision and your own values. You've translated that into why you're in business today, and then also to get really clear on the who that you want to serve. And so you're actually building a sustainable business. Like, you don't have to retire when all of your clients are retired and no longer in need of a financial advisor in the way that they were 20 years ago, because the way that you've built your business will evolve and transform, because those needs are so like, just, it doesn't matter. Demographics don't matter. Right. And so I think that's just such a wonderful demonstration for people who are listening of like why this is important, right? Why it's important to lead with your own personal why story, why it's so important to get really clear on the type of client that you want to serve, what their pain points are, what keeps them up in the middle of the night, what struggles are they facing, and ultimately, what are they looking for from a financial advisor? And it allows you to build a business that actually is going to have tenure, because you can now, depending on what your own personal goals are, you can think about finding other advisors, like-minded advisors who want to deliver the same type of service to clients. And you can easily build the business around it, because you haven't been so hyper-focused on one sliver of a demographic of a population that you actually don't have anything in common with.
Yeah, and I think it's important to talk about demographics and psychographics. And I'll just throw it out again. That's, I think, week 2. Okay, so week 2, right? And here's what's important about that, because I don't want to miss the demographic side. I spent a considerable amount of time going through the demographic that I want our practice to connect with. That's important for the right fit and also for the minimums, because we have a business model. So we need to do that. But then I went into the psychographics, that's the brilliant part of it, is to really think, what is my avatar, my person, my couple, the people that I want to work with? What are they thinking? What keeps them up at night? How do they feel? What is their personality trait? Are they go-getters? Are they active people? Do they like to relax and to fish? Who are these people and what do they do? Really understanding that helped me zero in on eventually realizing I know who these people are. They're already my clients. I've enjoyed great relationships with them, and I love the work I do for them. They want to worry less about what could go wrong. I know that for a fact because I've worked with them for years. It's not theory. And I know why, because they want to focus more on what to get right. And yeah, that is so generic. I know it's so generic, but I love it. I use it. I put it in conversations, and all the clients, prospects, they just nod. So yeah, it's simple. And other financial advisors may say, well, I'm pretty sure that's what I'm doing. I'm like, I know. Make a mission statement out of it. Go for it. But what I wanted to do, and this also came from the boot camp, is to make sure I have a few mantras that I can repeat my messaging, so the prospects and clients would know, yes, this is what Transitus Wealth does. This is what they do, because they're not going to refer me by saying, oh, there's this guy, Ross. I think he's really smart, and I don't actually understand most of what he's talking about. But you can trust him.
Good luck.
Right? It doesn't work that way. Actually, it probably did years ago, because how else would I have gotten referrals? Because they didn't know what I was talking about. But in this day and age, it's about the fact that I understand them. That's how the referrals happen. That's how they come. So simplify it, put it into the messaging. Demographics is important, but psychographics, you got to know what they're thinking, how they're feeling. then I'm in a position to help them.
Yeah, I appreciate the clarification on demographics, because you're right. Like, everybody has a business model, and you're in business to be in business, right? You're seeking different levels of fulfillment and joy and impact out of whatever business that you build, from one advisor to the next. But we're in business to be in business. And so I think, to your point, like making sure that there's a matched ability to work within your service offering. I think what I was getting really excited about when I was listening to you is, like, let's just say, I'm not sure what your minimum is at Transitus. Is it $1 million? Is it 500?
If I'm going to take them personally, it's 5 million. If it's in the practice, it could be $500,000 or $1 million for other advisors.
Okay, so you have that clear. But I think what I get excited about is there could be a 30-year-old that has that, from a demographic perspective. If we're just talking about income and investable assets, there could be a 30-year-old, or there could be a 70-year-old. And
Right.
how advisors have traditionally, and I'm a student of the industry. I know George Kinder and Richard Weilman and Bill Cates, and I've gone to all of those classes. And 20 years ago, it used to be very based on an age band, like a 5 to 10 year age band, or a really hyper specific profession. But then when you think about it, it's like, well, just because I work for UPS, I remember one advisor who targeted UPS drivers, which I think is funny now because they've made the news for how much money they make as a UPS driver. But, like, is it realistic to think that just because you're a UPS driver that you share worldviews and beliefs and you have the same concerns? Like, probably not. There's so much more that goes into developing a group of people who share those worldviews and beliefs. You actually can't just peg to an occupation or an age band. So that's what I think I was getting really excited about, sort of listening to your story, and then listening to how some of those mantras that you've come up with is, like, what a sustainable business that you've built to be able to serve people across generations. Because yes, you've got the demographics, and that's super important, but you're really shaping it all around the psychographics of those that you serve.
Yeah, and mine, of course, is going to be an evolution, and the statement of you can't fight evolution, right? It's going to happen no matter what, but it's way more fun if you lean into it. You have to evolve with whatever you're doing within your practice. What I think the younger people have, and the opportunity that they have, is to look at these different services and then create a service model. We're going to have a session at Shift, which I geek out about all of them. This one I'm geeking out about. It's Alan Moore from XYPN, who talks about niches and business models. And he's going to co-present with Sandra Davis, who talks about the financial continuum and all the different services you can do, from coaching to counseling and advising. And I had spoken with Sandra. She's just brilliant. Like, oh, you've got to come and speak. And I'm looking at her information, and then I get an email with, oh, here's what Alan could talk about. I'm like, oh, right. But that's what people need to see. The XYPN network is great at sharing different business models and giving people that freedom, and putting you in a position to be able to do that with their resources and support. Sandra Davis has been doing this for years on the academic side, on the financial coaching side. This is the type of stuff we have to get out to these advisors so they can think through, because it's part of their evolution. They can think through, gee, what can I do? How can I put this into a service model? It will keep evolving, but we have to put that information out there. We have to connect these advisors with this type of information, these presentations, and then they're going to get, hopefully, expert advice on marketing and branding and building out their service models. And now they can actually do something that's meaningful to them, instead of waiting down the road and saying, how can I make what I do more meaningful? That's kind of after the fact, but they get to do it up front. It's pretty cool.
Ross, it's been such a gift to have you on the New School podcast. So we have two questions. One will be, where can people find you? But we'll wait for that one. The one question that we ask at Shift next year, of course, but buy your tickets now. But before that, we ask every guest, what does the New School mean to you?
To me, New School is shifting the conversation and doing something new, where it isn't just better or a little different. It's something completely new. Meaning, when you take financial psychology, when you take human first and you add it to financial planning, you didn't just enhance financial planning. You created a business model, a relationship, and an outcome that didn't happen and couldn't happen any other way. So the New School means take the new approach, not to just enhance what you're doing, but actually to create something completely new. It's not 1 + 1 = 3 or more. That's just better. 3's still a number. 1 + 1 equals, I'm not really sure, but it's going to be new and it's way better than what we were doing. That's what we're all in the middle of. It's pretty exciting. So I love the concept.
I love it too. So where can people find you, and tell us a little bit about the Shift event in 2024?
Sure. Anywhere on social media, search my name, Ross Marino. We'll have some new websites coming up. For now, if you go to YouTube and search Advisor2X, that's where we put out most of our content, or you can find us on Twitter. The Shift event, the website is humanfirst.live, humanfirst.live. That will be in March of next year. We pretty much hit capacity in our first year, and we already had the contract signed for the second year. So probably going to hit capacity for that. Not a terrible thing. We do have to close at about 450 people, but it'll be in Orlando at the Swan and the Dolphin. It's going to be a couple days near the end of March. Hope people can make it. Just please register early. Room block will fill up. Registration will get closed. So please join us.
Wonderful. For any advisor interested in adapting more of a human first approach to their practice, evolving it, expanding it, or being part of the community, we will see you there, because we'll be there hopefully too. Okay. Thanks so much, Ross.
My pleasure. Appreciate you having me.